So it's totally not Mark's top 3 anime's biggest lie. The big 3 anime's biggest lie. First of all, just pointing out that the thumbnail was fucking Jujutsu Kaisen, so I'm a bit... It doesn't show it here. Okay, Goku's clapping at us. The big 3 anime's biggest lie. And it's a picture of Sukuna, which I'm a bit worried about in terms of what the fuck that has to do with anything, but sure. But anyway, fucking great content creator. If you enjoy Dragon Ball, any of them in fact, whether it be like OGZ, GT or Super, check out these Dragon Ball reviews. They're fucking amazing. At some point, you might actually react to them. I haven't watched them in, I think, since they came out, which was quite long ago, and I've got the fucking memory of a goldfish, but right now we don't have an hour and a half to sit through them, so we're going to go through this instead, and he shit's really good. I will link the video in the description as well.
You know what the big 3 are and why? I thought I did too at the beginning.
Okay, can I point out, okay, if he's replacing Dragon Ball with Jujutsu Kaisen, I have a lot of questions.
Of this journey, but I assure you, you'll soon find out that almost everything you thought you knew about this trio of anime has been a lie.
What? That's a very fucking bold statement. Not that I necessarily disagree with him. I feel like... I don't actually know where I was going with that thought. But like, I don't necessarily disagree with him, but... Everything? Also the fact that I haven't really watched One Piece beyond fucking half of first arc, and I'm like, okay guys, I'm just going to wait for the remake. And never watched Naruto, so that's going to be interesting.
Let me explain.
And also, I'm a Dragon Ball Z dub kind of guy, which... may be a very interesting take.
Coined in the early 2000s, the Big 3 was a title bestowed to capture the importance of 3 specific series. Naruto by Masashi Kishimoto.
Okay. In fairness, he is right.
Bleach by Tite Kubo. And of course, One Piece by Eiichiro.
I completely fucking forgot Dragon Ball is not one of the big 3. In my mind, it is one of the big 3, but I always forget it's fucking Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece. So now I'm going to watch about 3 that are animes that I literally do not know much about. Because also Bleach, I only watched some of the first arc, and then fucking... So Bleach, fun fact. Everyone watched it when we were growing up. Never decided to watch it. Then do I go on holiday to Cambodia for a friend's wedding. Fucking phenomenal, great guy. He decides, well, hey, watch it. It's on Netflix. I'm like, oh, dope. It's on Netflix. Let me watch it. Fuck it. Why not? So get quite a few episodes in. Then proceed to leave Cambodia. Only to realize it's not on South African Netflix. It's on Cambodia Netflix. So, do I really want to watch illegal streams? It's also not on Crunchyroll. Fun fact, not on Crunchyroll South Africa either. So, do I really want to watch illegal streams of this? Anyway, that was the tangent about Bleach, but hey.
Individually, they are some of the most illustrious and successful manga ever released, but together they form...
Was that Yu-Gi-Oh?
They are some of the most big and successful manga.
It is. That's all Yugi. And OG Yugi, not whether the fuck this new stuff is. I don't know what's happening. I liked it when they just made up rules and rules didn't exist and they claimed that you could summon 4 monsters in a turn because you can. That is the Yu-Gi-Oh I remember and I miss.
That ever released, but together they form the Big 3. However, now, 20 years removed from when that title was first coined, 2 of these series have concluded while the other is approaching its end. And so it begs the question, or rather questions. If these legendary stories were universally agreed to be the Big 3 from the early 2000s, is there a Big 3 for our current era?
In fairness, I actually forget Dragon Ball is pre-2000. Also, if they're about to put fucking My Hero Academia as one of the Big 3. Actually, in fairness, there is no actual... Okay, I could be wrong here. This is my limited knowledge. But is there any anime that is like... received that many episodes to the extent that... Yes, I know there were early 2000s animes, but I mean... Hey, fucking over 1,000 episodes for One Piece. I can't imagine Bleach is much better. I can't imagine Naruto is also much better. Also, Boruto kind of counts as... Does that really count as continuation? I mean, it's his son. But please don't put My Hero Academia there.
Of anime. Is that even possible? What does the Big 3 even mean, really?
Also, Jujutsu Kaisen is like, okay, I know My Hero has at least got, I think, over 100 episodes. I could be wrong. I haven't watched the latest season yet. Waiting for that all to come out so I can binge it. I feel like Jujutsu Kaisen's like one season. I'm sure it's like 20 something episodes. I could be wrong. Jujutsu Kaisen. Okay, 47. Maybe. 24. I don't know where Google told me 47 first. Okay, 24 episodes, one of the big three. Okay.
And where did it come from? I figured this question would be simple to answer, but oh boy, was I wrong. Seeking this answer has taken me across the entire internet down a rabbit hole so deep that I've forgotten the feeling of natural light, and even led me to interview a
I mean, in fairness, fake light, synthetic light is so much better. I mean, everyone wants red light therapy, and you can't get that shit outside. So, I mean, who are we to judge you?
Chief Marketing Officer / Director at Crunchyroll, who also happens to be an anime consultant and historian of sorts. The journey to answer this
Historian. I don't know what historian for anime means. Also, homie holding a fucking strawberry in his profile picture, so we're judging him.
supposed simple question is more interesting than you might think, and spoiler alert, if you thought you already knew the answer, you're dead wrong.
I'm assuming it's like... I'm assuming I'm gonna get so fucking DMCA'd for this. That was dope.
Okay, so
That was
before we
fucking great
determine
editing.
What a modern day big three looks like, we must first establish an answer to one question. What made One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach the big three? Now, I thought this was going to be the easiest part of the video, but once again, I was wrong, and going forward, I will learn from this mistake and refrain from thinking ever again. To set the stage, this journey began with me just idly wondering this very question.
I forgot about Hunter x Hunter.
To get my answer. Except, very quickly, it became evident that all of these websites contradicted each other.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna fucking argue about that.
I only further spiraled in.
Wait, what was that?
All of these websites contradicted each other. Article after
Why Dragon Ball isn't considered a shonen big three. Also, Dragon Ball's pre-2000, just saying.
article. I only
Also, why the fuck does Goku have a Capsule Corp logo? When the fuck did that happen?
further spiraled into a
I don't think he ever wore Capsule Corp gi. Okay. Dragon Ball Heroes thing. Why the fuck would you use the Dragon Ball Heroes? I want to say non-canon, but I don't really know what the fuck is happening. If it counts as non-canon, canon as your picture, but okay, nevertheless.
deeper confusion. CBR claimed the big three came about as a
Originating Western anime fandom in the mid-2000s, the term Big Three refers to One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. The popularity and extensive length meant they frequently featured on the cover of Shonen Jump, and shared covers often featured characters from all the three franchises. The Big Three were the anime that fans simply couldn't escape from, since they dominated conventions, merchandise, and forums. Despite this being a term used for the most popular and ubiquitous properties, Dragon Ball Z isn't among their legendary number.
fan term due to their popularity, length, and how often they were on the cover of Weekly Shonen Jump together. Conversely, Game Rant claimed that the term was not fan-made at all, but
Due to how the phenomenon came about, what the context surrounding the term was, the Big Three can only be referenced to titles that emerged after the end of Dragon Ball, Slam Dunk, Yu Yu Hakusho, I pronounced it wrong, and others from the Golden Age. All were actually published in Shonen Jump and enjoyed periods of immense success, top-selling titles within Shonen Jump. Specialty of Shonen Jump as a magazine must be emphasized here, because a phenomenon descriptor that was used specifically for Jump by Jump ended up becoming a mark of irremovable quality and influence for the entirety of anime and manga, as media rather than just been a particular publisher of shonen media.
But an official moniker adopted internally by Shonen Jump itself due to the substantial positive sales impact these stories had on the magazines domestically during the late 90s and early 2000s. Article after article, forum after forum, it became abundantly clear that there really is no absolute consensus on this. The only component of this I was certain on was that One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach were the titles that comprised the big three. But still, no answer for the why aspect. which means it's time to deploy the nuclear option. I must
I highly doubt Dexter's Lab falls in that category, but hey.
do my own research. I will never forgive the online anime community for forcing me to do actual work, and so
I know, that's bullshit.
my research
He doesn't get to sit here in his chair and react to a video that is very well made by a pretty good professional and then bitch.
journey was just going down a hole and fact-checking everything in the aforementioned Game Rant article. The principal assertion of the article was that The Big Three was in fact a title which represented a specific instance in history rather than one that could be passed on, so to speak.
I mean, we've got Yugi on one of the covers. Yu-Gi-Oh card at least.
And that's an interesting assertion, but why?
Also not 10 minutes part of the Big Three. Let me also be very clear with that.
Since its debut in the late 1960s, Weekly Shonen Jump quickly became Shueisha's standout magazine. Thanks in part to its most popular era ever, and no, it's not the Big Three, it was a time period referred to as the Golden Age. And thank God this is something we can actually fact check pretty easily. Weekly Shonen Jump sales are public data, and look at that. We can see pretty clearly that its sales were growing exponentially through this golden
JoJo,
age,
Dragon
all the way
Ball.
through to 1995, the year Dragon Ball ended. Which is kind of crazy. I mean, I guess next time I diss the Boo arc, I should keep in mind it probably sold more Weekly Shonen Jump copies than pretty much any other arc in the manga's history. Furthermore, we can also positively
fair.
fact-check Game Rant's claim that after this golden era, Weekly Shonen Jump
The Golden Age of Shonen Jump was so immensely successful that the end of some of its major intellectual properties saw the decline of the weekly sales of the magazine. The end of Slam Dunk and Dragon Ball created a huge vacuum in the magazine that led to a huge drop in circulation numbers for the magazine. This void left by the mass exodus of major long-running specializations would not have been filled had it not been for the emergence of three titles in the late 1990s to early 2000s. Titles that would come to garner similar levels of global acclaim and attention as their predecessors. Their titles were One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, whose arrival saw a revival of the Weekly Shonen Jump magazine specifically.
Jump sales
Okay.
plummeted.
So they
with weekly
saved them.
circulation going from around 6 million in 1995 to
Fuck.
almost 3 million by 1996.
I'm just saying, Dragon Ball
So far, so good.
apparently made a
good
fucking
that the
magazine.
article was objectively correct with this claim, but not so much that Weekly Shonen Jump sales were in the toilet. However, this is where the article breaks down completely and sent me crashing headfirst into a brick wall. It claims that Weekly
Hopefully you
Shonen
went in
Jump's
the car.
figures once again skyrocketed when the Big Three came along, reaching similar heights as the Golden Era and saving the magazine from the brink.
Well, it's
The
probably never
reason why
on
I
the
have an
brink.
issue with that is because it is objectively wrong. And don't take my word for it, just look at the data. Was this the sort of, quote, revival of interest they were referring to? Sales and circulation figures of the magazine year after year marching figuratively off a cliff, with the only years where these figures didn't plateau or decrease being 1999 and a short stretch a decade later from 2008 to 2011. However,
interested
by
to
that
see
point,
where-
magazine sales had plummeted so low that they were literally less than half of the 1995 peak. Not exactly the revival that was described.
Very
Okay,
interested to
maybe
see if
I was
Dragon
just
Ball
missing something.
Z was in there.
Maybe I need to look specifically at the numbers for the Big Three themselves. Let's see what I can find. There we go. The list of best-selling manga. All I have to do is organize by publisher and
You have One Piece, Case Closed, Detective Conan, Dragon Ball, Doraemon, Naruto, Slam Dunk, Kichokame, Demon Slayer, Crayon Shinchan, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
And, wait, this list only offers data that has been gathered since 2008. That misses like 10
nice.
years of One Piece's run and a large chunk of Bleach and Naruto's too, arguably their most successful arcs. This is that brick wall I mentioned earlier. Basically,
There's just no
every
info and no
article cites
data.
amazing sales figures as a core reason for the moniker of Big Three, but none of that data is actually available anywhere. And if we can't fact check those, how in the hell can we verify any of this sentiment? How can I even continue making this video? I'll tell you how.
What?
Throw a Hail Mary of a tweet into the ether. Get the attention of one of the most reputable and well
I should make clear I'm not disputing whether or not One Piece, Naruto, or Bleach deserve this title. They simply are the Big Three.
researched individuals in the English-speaking anime community to comment on your post and then pester them in DMs incessantly until they agree to an interview with you and answer all your questions. And listen,
Don't harass people, but hey, it worked, so maybe we should harass people because it gets results.
okay, you might be saying at this juncture, Mark, why do you care so much? This is an internet meme from over 20 years ago. Why has the atmosphere of the video changed from a lighthearted bit of fun to obsessively sweaty data analysis mixed with rudimentary journalism?
Because
so what if everyone can't
people
agree
need to
on a
make money.
concrete definition? These are all fine questions, to which I say, fuck off and eat a dildo. Definitions matter. Thousands of people this very second are arguing viciously over this 20-year-old meme that they don't know the first thing about, making enemies in the process. As far as I was concerned, trying to untangle this internet mystery was my good deed for the week. But when I hopped onto
I feel like this took a lot longer than a week, I'm just saying. I think it passed a week long ago, friend.
My perspective on the big three and how it came to be changed forever. For those that don't know, Miles is the guy when it comes to consultations for anime marketing statistics in the West. And over his long career working for companies like Crunchyroll and Anime Limited, he's accrued estimates and sales figures from this era that are not only valuable, but impossible.
So homie
to
got the
find
data.
online. One thing at the moment we're trying to kind of suss out is presently we've only been able to find sales data from
Dude, homie's got a fucking immaculate hairline. Holy shit.
2008 onwards for the weekly Shonen Jump releases in question.
That is what I call
might be able to
jealous.
Find more comprehensive data to confirm the sales.
I mean, I paid a lot of money for those numbers.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
He bribed a motherfucker, got
Basically,
you.
Yeah, I worked with some consulting firms in Japan to get a lot of my numbers for the purpose of making English language reports that I could then sell.
Okay, so clearly I had found the right person. However, in this interview,
How
when
much did you have to
I
pay to
opened
get the
with
data from
question,
him?
What defined the big three according to his knowledge? His response was not what I expected. He didn't say cultural influence, nor did he mention any dominance regarding sales figures. What he told us determined the big three initially was the user feedback cards.
Okay, I suppose, yeah, okay, he says they didn't bring up cultural relevance, but I feel like, okay, apart from also Dragon Ball Z, okay, I feel like Dragon Ball Z might be a much bigger influence where I'm from, where you got home as a kid after school and you went to go watch Dragon Ball Z. You all watched it on fucking SABC2 on Tube, and you watched that for about 7 years because that's all they showed. So it became massive cultural relevance, but also feel like these two were kind of what made anime okay. And when I say okay, I mean in terms of content, I mean it was fine to watch anime. There were a lot of like the bleeding anime on from childhood into adulthood, and like kind of cemented anime as you watch that shit. Not you watch that shit in terms of like you watch that shit as in like it's crap, but like you actually watch anime. It's okay. It's fine to watch. You can watch it as not a kid. And I feel like that just paved the way so much for like so many animes to come almost mainstream. Like I feel like my anime is mainstream now. No one's really looking at you weird because you fucking got a Crunchyroll subscription or you watch anime now. Now it's fine. It's normal. It's okay. I think these were the three that were kind of like a lot of the catalysts behind that, which I suppose would be social impact and fairness. But yeah.
What the heck are those?
So every week, when you buy a volume of Shonen Jump, there are like 1.5 million, 2 million people who are buying Shonen Jump every week or picking it up at their local convenience store. And there's basically a reader response card where you can rank the manga within the pages. There are 20, 25 different manga featured every week.
Okay, can we please... Yeah, I don't know when this is from that he's here. But I feel like the first 1 or 2 seasons are fucking... Aichima Soma Yukihira. But fucking Kitchen Wars, whatever it's called, fucking dope.
And you can kind of use it to show your fandom or show your support. And these cards are one of like a dozen metrics that editors use to decide the popularity of things. It really actually...
Mashal, also fucking great anime. If you like joke animes and like fucking Black Clover to the next level of ridiculousness and not trying to be serious, fucking great anime.
There are a lot of interviews with editors that say this is a pretty meager metric, for anything other than like one shots or brand new series. Those are the only places where those cards are, going to be a difference maker. It's just kind of a way to get people engaged. But when you look at the numbers of people who submit those cards, we're talking tens of thousands. So we're talking less than 1% of all people who buy the magazine are sending it back in. And that kind of makes sense. Just a lot of people aren't going to be bothered to do that.
I feel like that's actually not a physical based metric. Like, it's not a digital survey filling out online. It's nothing. You literally have to take that card out, fill it in, and send it back. I feel like 1% actually isn't bad. Like, that's pretty. I would expect a lot less people to actually take that card out, fill it in, and then I suppose mail or send it back. I feel like that's actually, it's a relatively solid metric. And that's also probably your most hardcore fan base that want to be heard. They want to have their opinion viewed. They want to be heard. They probably are the people buying your magazine week in, week out. So I feel like that's also probably your best market to actually judge that stuff off of, because they're your most hardcore. Yes, it might get too extreme, they might get too niche, but it's also a good metric because they're not like trying the Kool-Aid out. They're fucking downing leaders of it already. I actually feel like that's the fact that it's also such a small, okay, 10,000 is still a lot of people, but it's such a small group of people sending it back means that having that slight barrier to entry make it slightly more difficult is probably actually a pretty decent gauge of where you should be heading. Because you're not just going to get some random person who just decides, fucking, I want this one thing that no one actually wants. Sending in feedback and then skewing data so much because there's a relevant amount of people actually doing that.
In periods where hundreds of thousands of people were sending it in, but it's still a fraction of the total audience.
This was news to both myself and my entire crew. Despite these user feedback cards being a clear, over-exaggerated and overblown representation of popularity within the magazine itself, these results
That was probably also the only metric they had.
Metrics which established these three titles as the big three in the West. And what's more is, it gets even more interesting. I've heard a lot of people reference the impressive sales figures for the trio of manga, Bleach, One Piece, and Naruto as the reason that they're the big three. But is it more fair to say that it's the consistency with which they place within the top three in the popularity polls that determined whether or not they were in fact the big three?
That was the origin of it, because the sales weren't.
I feel like that's fair.
So the big three kind of came around 2006, 2005, 2006 era, and at that point they weren't selling like gangbusters yet. Like, they were not the best three selling by any means. Like, Death Note was still around, Hunter x Hunter was doing really well. Now, retroactively, people have gone back and used that as a justification.
Right.
But that is kind of with the benefit of hindsight.
You can't use that,
Like I said, like, we don't actually have very good data, so we only know the top 10 best-selling manga of all of Japan for most of those years. Like, I've tried to access other forms of data that show, and it kind of shows Death Note, like, again, it's mostly estimates. It shows that Death Note would have been a big three for a lot of those years, and Hunter x Hunter would have been a big three. Only in like 2009, 2010 were the big three, the big three
Claymore
of sales. So, like, there's a short period of time, a couple years where they were the best in the polls, or in the survey, the reader surveys. There's a short period of time where they're the best selling.
Let's just feel like they outlasted some of the other animes.
They are the best selling overall from that era.
Okay.
That's also because they're long running.
Okay. Yeah.
So other manga
they have the
way outperformed in
because they've been around for so long and have so many issues. They are able to outsell. Hunter x Hunter wasn't that long. Death Note definitely isn't that fucking long. So they might have, in terms of just pure sales, be done decently, but in terms of long term, I actually get the fact that they weren't, or the fact that they were slightly less sold, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
In terms of a per volume basis.
According to those numbers, the only years where One Piece
There's nothing. Okay.
Naruto, and Bleach were collectively considered the big three in terms of sales figures were 2009, and that's kind of it.
I think they're also the only ones around then.
And 2010, while they are up there.
Fuck is 20th Century Boys?
certainly they are not the top 3 together. And so while when all was said and done, there are great sales numbers between all 3 that put them in contention with each other, when it came to looking at each individual year, only one lined up the way we wanted it to. What the fuck? This flies heavily in the face of the commonly accepted knowledge of their long reign atop the sales charts together. What's most interesting to me concerning these stats is that, from the looks of it, what has defined the big 3 over the decades has morphed and changed over time to justify these 3 being packaged together by any means necessary. You could say that what has defined the big 3 has sort of changed over time almost to justify these 3 things staying in contention with each other. So realistically, if we want to stay with the original definition of the big 3, you'd want to be looking specifically at the popularity polls for the most consistent metric. Almost like a moving goalpost, sales figures weren't enough to justify their grouping in the mid to late 2000s.
Also feel like, I think we're also overlooking the fact that they've just existed for so long. Like, there is some... I think there is some validity in that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to insult the storyline of Death Note or Hana Hana. I think there was Fairy Tail up there once or twice as well. Of other anime that might have actually been better written, had better storylines, but the consistency to keep active progression, and also the shonen style of anime lends itself to a much more elongated approach than something like Death Note, for example. But the fact they've just been around for so long and they've been consumed, whether it was watched, whether it was in this sense read, it does prove there's something to them. And I feel like even if there are other anime that were attempting to be just as or not necessarily just as popular, but just as big, just as what's the right way to put it, exist for just as long as a period of time, but have never been able to do it, I feel like there is some validity in saying they are the big 3. I mean, aside from maybe Dragon Ball Z, I suppose maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! I'd have to actually look at the data around Yu-Gi-Oh! And how long it was around for. But also there were so many variations within Yu-Gi-Oh! Changing the characters, changing this, changing that, which I feel like doesn't allow it to be the same continuation as like Naruto being about fucking Naruto. Bleach being about Ichigo, One Piece being about fucking Straw Hat Pirate Man, I can't think of his name, Luffy. There hasn't been any there hasn't been that relevance for such a long period of time that I think the others deserve to be considered like the big 3.
And so the popularity polls were used despite their lack of merit. And you know what's hilarious? It now finally makes a little more sense to me why this 2011 OVA crossover with Toriko and One Piece exists at all. Prior to the OVA, I had no idea who this weird buff guy with the blue hair was. But now I know Toriko kicked Bleach out of the top 3 within those ever so sacred popularity polls back in 2008. And given that those popularity polls were the only metric folks were using to determine the big 3 back then, a reasonable conversation had begun to anoint Toriko as the latest member of the trio in 08. Which, funnily enough, had also been the case for both Death Note and Hunter x Hunter. Look at that, kids. Learning is fun. I do wonder.
But there's a reason none of them exist anymore. Okay, I don't actually know about Suriko. Also, Hana Hana, no one's ever fucking... that just never got continued. It's completed, 147 episodes. I don't feel like that's that long. Death Note's fucking a whole 4 episodes. Okay, no, it's not 4. But yeah, I feel like I was saying, it's just that consistency.
Then, if by using that metric, because this is a metric that carries forth to even today, you could, in theory, use that metric to define and determine a big 3 for each individual decade.
And people have tried to do this.
Okay. But because the definition has changed. Yeah.
But even people have used this same metric, and there's just actually not the same dominance anymore.
Okay.
Things cycle.
Oh, that's actually interesting.
And like even let's say when My Hero Academia was at its most popular.
Actually, in fairness, what he just said is, I think, also getting to what I was saying, or emphasizing at least what I was saying before. The consistency because none of these have had the longevity to prove that they're still relevant after fucking 1,000 episodes. Or so One Piece 1117. Okay, I'm just using episodes instead of manga, but I feel like it's all so you have 700 chapters for Naruto. 698 for Bleach. What was the other one? 1,100 for One Piece. And if we go My Hero, 430 chapters. It isn't even, it's like half. Okay, I know it's a little bit over half. But it's at the point where it's also ending. So I'm guessing what, maybe 430, it's got 2 weeks. Call it 450. That's less than half of One Piece. And just above half of the other two. It doesn't have that consistency. If we look at like, I mean, there's just Kaizen is 275. And also, it presumes to be finishing soon. Yeah, Demon Slayer doesn't really give me something I don't feel like going into artists. But even if we look at Hana, it's 400. I mean, it's still also just that half.
In the West, like 2016, 2017. Yeah. It wasn't in the big three of Shonen Jump. It was like number 4, pretty consistently.
Oh, wow,
by that
okay.
metric. And so that kind of seems weird to us because a lot of Westerners have also taken the perspective that, oh, that was what the big three originally meant. We own it now, and it's the big three in the West. But that's also kind of not true because Naruto was more popular than One Piece and Bleach combined 3 times over in the aughts.
When I first began making this video,
Jesus.
I had a clear idea on what made these 3 stories worthy of the moniker The Big Three.
They had
I thought
orange
that
in them.
they did, sales figures were on their side and that their
Bleach's
cultural
hair,
impact in the West
Naruto's
was the
outfit, and
final
Nami's hair.
factor which sealed their legacy. But
It's
after sitting down with
some level of
fans,
orange.
digesting the data he shared and the perspective he offered, it seems that I was incorrect on both fronts. Not only were the sales figures not what formed the original definition of the Big Three as we know it, but the cultural impact I've heard touted all over the internet too wasn't as we once thought. With stories like One Piece, a now modern-day juggernaut, in the 2000s, it, along with Bleach, were orders of magnitude more irrelevant than Naruto, and a wide assortment of other anime ripe for contention in the West also.
I mean, that is actually
Like,
fair.
watching Code Geass,
Although-
why aren't you watching
Although I say that, and Bleach was pretty much fucking massive, but to us at least, which I know is also very niche.
this? Why aren't you watching that? Everything was more popular than One Piece in English-speaking countries. Sure, in France or Germany, yeah, there was more One Piece love. In Latin America, for sure. But it took a long time for One Piece to kind of shed its for kids, like, sheen, the bad reputation it got from that. So only recently did One Piece become popular in the West.
I actually feel like that's
Or in
slightly
English-speaking
fair.
While Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece were the properties Miles spoke on the most, he also gave me a lot to think about regarding Dragon Ball and that golden age we
Please don't ever destroy my Dragon Ball. Please. Just, I can't.
explored earlier. While yes, sales of Weekly Shonen Jump dropped considerably and never recovered following 1995,
Also, Dragon Ball, I'm assuming that was, I don't know if that was Z or Dragon Ball.
there could potentially be another way of interpreting this data. According to Miles, Rather than this drop necessarily being an indication of plummeting sales figures due to subpar manga being serialized in the magazine, it could instead be a return to the status quo. Dragon Ball to this day is still one of the most popular properties in the entire world. Looking at
I feel
the
like that's
sales data
fair.
for that era, it's clear that those incredibly profitable years for Weekly Shonen Jump were at least in part facilitated by monumental moments from that series, such as the climax to the Frieza arc and Gohan's clash with Cell. As Miles describes, series like Slam Dunk and Dragon Ball encouraged and brought in an audience that otherwise would never have purchased copies of Weekly Shonen Jump. To
I
put
feel
it
like
as
that's also
simply as
fair.
possible, you know how there's a lot of people who have only ever watched Dragon Ball and Naruto, but not any other anime? Or perhaps you know of the droves of football stars that love One Piece, but nothing else. It's sort of that same deal.
That is fair.
Once in a while, a property like these comes along and crosses the line from interesting to anime fans on into interesting to the entire world, and in the process luring in viewers who would otherwise never read any other manga. The golden
I actually
era
feel like
was
that
a
is very
huge boom
fair.
in this exact type of viewer, with Dragon Ball and Slam Dunk bringing in casuals from
Okay, clearly
virtually
does mean Z,
everywhere.
not
And
OG.
once they were gone, Weekly Shonen Jump's plummeting sales was actually just returning to the status quo. So at the very least, those plummeting sales
I actually feel like this is quite a cool way to look at it. That I suppose here I was talking about Dragon Ball and Slam Dunk was so fucking era defining that you had started watching Dragon Ball, because I'm sure at some point the anime started to get produced before the manga was at a certain point in time, hence filler and fucking Piccolo and Goku learning how to drive. And in fairness, Snake Lady on Snake Way, I can't remember which was called, but you had so much filler so that they could catch up. And I feel like, especially on like the Cell arc and Boo arc, probably did what he's saying, caused such a massive trend. And we've watched the anime, we want to read into the manga because we want to get ahead, we want to see what's going to happen, we want to know what's going to happen, we want to know the answer, we want to fucking, read the last few pages of the book, as it were, get a sneak peek at the end, and then all of a sudden it was fucking massive. And then Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece kind of had to carry that on, which
product of the big three and its era's shortcomings, which
suppose
is good,
never
but that's still kind of
define an entire generation.
leaves us hanging in a limbo state regarding the why on the big three. Even with internal data and an expert at her side,
I'd
any
say consistency and time.
data-driven explanation for its existence is flimsy at best. I think looking at everything I've learned, the closest we can get to an explanation is just that these three relatively popular series all came together and experienced global popularity around the same time, which felt significant. So then, out of curiosity, before the interview concluded, I confronted Miles and asked him what he personally would use to gauge a modern Big Three.
My personal argument
Ooh.
would be that it would be internationally focused, since most of the revenue from anime
I
and
have no
manga is
fucking
now
idea on what international focus is. I just know what I like to watch.
outside of Japan, which was the case for a brief moment during the Big Three's reign, but it finally is again in a consistent way. So I would say just in terms of overall cultural impact, and then I would say you wouldn't look at the popularity polls or anything like that because those are always going to be limited and self-selecting, so they're never going to be representative of the whole of the anime manga community.
Yeah, I feel like that is fair, but wouldn't you want to look at them? So any data is still valid data. Its representation can change. Its pool of what it's been used for, what it's understood for, is always valid. Like, if you ask 3 people, you're going to get a very narrow view of what the general population says. But if you have an idea of what the general population says, and then those 3 people agree with them, they can be representative of that general population. So I feel like being able to use other markers in terms of international trends, I mean, now I'm pretty sure they have ways to track what people are watching on, Crunchyroll, Netflix, all those kind of streaming services. Yes, all the illegal ones that we don't support, just sometimes. You're not really going to get data from there. But with all the legitimate ways we have to view, read, and watch anime or manga, surely you can take that general data and then see the surveys as representative elements of that general data. I don't know.
And then I'd also say it has to be anime related because in English speaking countries, the rate of people who read manga relative to watch anime is like 50 to 60%.
Despite it all,
That is very
even
fair.
as insane
Uh,
and poorly defined
Especially with Crunchyroll no longer doing a manga service. You have to buy the manga, I think, on the website to some weird fucking setup now, but there's no more Crunchyroll manga app or meaning it makes it so much harder to get a hold of, which is a very different aspect, especially when you could have it a subscription-based service where you could just read all the fucking manga you wanted. It made it a lot more accessible, whereas without that feature, now you have to go buy it, which I don't even know how the fuck to do digitally or from where digitally. And the physical selection is just so much smaller and often more expensive and a lot more just like unwieldy. Fuck, we live in the 21st century. I just want to read comics or manga on its fucking tablet and don't want to have the actual physical book. So if you're going to sell it to me at half the price because you don't have to print it, I'm even happier with that.
An ethereal
Or a subscription-based service like Marvel is doing. I'm not sure about DC. I'm sure they would have some equivalent.
as the big three has turned out to be, I think this loose definition for the big three really aligns most with what the community now thinks of when they think of Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach. When most people think of the big three, they aren't thinking of hard sales data or polling cards or weekly Shonen Jump covers. They just think back to a period of time where three standout anime all at once held the dominant place in viewers' minds.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it.
With that in mind, who we may crown the new big three is tough to say. There are a great many anime in modern times that have captured.
He keeps just showing My Hero Academia,
even outside of Shonen Jump,
Demon
IPs,
Slayer. Oh, okay,
properties like Attack on Titan, One Punch Man, and Kill la Kill managed to reach those heights in specific verticals, going as far as to secure huge global streaming deals with the likes of Netflix, as well as helping to establish Crunchyroll as a household name. Should they not
I mean, that
be
is
for
fair.
contention just because they didn't come from the right magazine? I don't think so personally. But ultimately, I think if we are to zero in on the true modern kings of anime and manga, we have to look for those rare properties that not only manage to capture huge appeal to both dedicated and casual fans alike, but that also held that position all together in a way that helped push the medium itself into the spotlight. Three anime that have been running concurrently with each other for years upon years now, and consistently made up a significant portion of what people think of when they think of anime today. And with that in mind, I decided to ask Miles what three he would choose. And as surprising as it was, with everything I now know, I think I agree with him.
This is, I'm guessing, if it's a 3 he keeps showing, otherwise he has to go and figures what, he's referenced Hunter x Hunter, he referenced My Hero, I would guess Attack on Titan?
I mean, I would say we don't have a big three anymore, we have a big two.
Oh, interesting.
Oh shit, okay.
Really, I would say the big two are Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer.
Okay.
And then the third is One Piece.
Both Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen are modern anime through and through and have lived.
Really? I just don't think there's enough content or consistency there. The Demon Slayer's not a lot longer. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of Jujutsu Kaisen. I actually fucking love the anime. Never read the manga. But I just don't feel like there's the consistency and the amount of content to justify calling it pretty much the biggest anime of the modern era. Like, especially that it's not going to have the longevity of something like Dragon Ball, Naruto, One Piece, or Bleach. I love how One Piece still got referenced as one of the modern big three.
At the top of that mountain for so much of their run. It's nearly impossible to deny their impact, and if you try, you will invariably end up running into a Demon Slayer bumper sticker at your local supermarket a day later. These two series have sat next to each other, redefining what people think of when they think of anime for a long time now, in a way that once again feels very noteworthy. And then, of course, the surprise third member here is One Piece, still hanging around where it calls
Not really, I mean, you fucking got a live
of the industry.
action adaptation.
This modern big three we've chosen isn't exactly as concrete and factual as you want it to be. The true objective why of the original big three is all but unknowable. A combination of many, many factors that coalesced into this relic of the past. Anyone that tries to tell you an objective reason why the big three are what they are has, much like those
Best believe we're going to try to
articles I
justify an
mentioned
objective
earlier,
reason
not
for
dug
it.
deep enough to find the real truth. And that truth is that the big three are the big three because we call them that now. We might have initially used popularity polls and eventually pivoted to sales data when it suited us, or perhaps some of you have used any number of alternate avenues to try and justify its existence as we know it today. But ultimately, none of them are absolute. If there is any one thing I personally have taken away from this journey though, other than a personal vendetta against several anime news websites, damn them straight to hell, I think
I
it's a
agree.
curiosity for what will come
I
once
took
these
damning
properties
stuff
have
straight to
all
hell. I feel like
finished,
that's fun.
especially One Piece. Naturally, with Demon Slayer concluded and Jujutsu Kaisen ending very soon, a new era of anime atop the mountain is sure to take its place in the future. I don't think anyone is sincerely worried that anime will run dry of exciting new stories to tell and characters to fall in love with. But One Piece, that's what interested me most. During its run, Dragon Ball reached heights that broke barriers beyond the anime industry, and into a worldwide cultural phenomenon that arguably has still yet to be matched. And in
I
its
feel
wake,
like that's actually
slowly
very
over the
fair.
years,
I feel like the only thing that can kind of claim a similar standard would maybe be Pokemon, but I don't know so much if that's to do with. I don't think that's to do with the anime or manga. I feel like that's more to do with the entire franchise, the card game, the physical games, whatever the fuck you want to call them, the games on Switch, Game Boy, whatever. I feel like that's defined so much of it, not just the anime or manga.
One Piece began to take its place, to the point where now it too has broken past that barrier. Not by remaining part of the Big Three solar system, but by standing on its own as a galaxy into and of itself. But that didn't happen immediately. In 1995, when Dragon Ball concluded, One Piece was but a measly ant culturally compared to where it has gotten to now, decades later. Manga
That
and
is
anime
fair.
went years without a golden era level barrier breaker like One Piece, and soon because of that, we will soon find ourselves back in 1995 once again. When One Piece ends, once the dust has settled and the anime streaming sites have all repaired their servers that will no doubt be lit on fire in the process, who will stand to take One Piece's place? Will we experience another decade without a cultural phenomenon leading the charge, or will an unlikely anime spring forth from the shadows and become the next One Piece? The next Dragon Ball? I have honestly no idea, but that's kind of what makes this so exciting. I mean, my personal bet is on my wife becomes an elementary school student. That one sounds like a real winner. Just kidding. Or am I? Thanks for watching, guys.
Nah, we never
Bye.
kid.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. It ended up very different than I originally planned, but was one hell of a journey regardless. My interview with Miles was actually over 30 minutes long, so if you are curious and want to watch the whole thing, I'll be posting it to my Patreon for 4-star supporters and above. Go check it out if you're curious, and remember to eat your vegetables.
That was such a random ending to that. That was actually such a fucking well done video. Chat, like always, I'll link the video down in the description below. Go give Tony and my mark some love. These fucking Dragon Ball reviews are absolute gold. If you've never watched them, you have to watch them. They are fucking great. Especially, everyone's going to knock me on this, but his GT reviews. Yes, no one really remembers what happened in GT. It was a very weird point in our lives. We all watched it because we didn't know what better to do. But his GT reviews are fucking phenomenal. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was actually a really interesting way to look at that because, like he says, there is no real metric in terms of popularity, sales, anything to justify them, and even cultural relevance, like he says. One Piece is only massive now. Before that, it wasn't really. I do think, in my opinion, that the consistency and longevity of all three have made them capable of being called Big Three. The fact they've just been around for so much longer than anything else, been stable so long, and been, even if not the most popular, somewhat popular for such a long period of time, I think it does justify their cult status. And like they said, it's the Big Three. I mean, even if they want to put JJK and Demon Slayer is finished, according to this. I don't actually know if it is or isn't. Jujutsu Kaisen's finishing soon. They just haven't had the longevity to justify being called part of the Big Three. They're just not there yet. And I feel like, in fairness, Jujutsu Kaisen, I think both are kind of really culturally relevant at this moment in time. But I just don't feel like they have that longevity to be claimed and put on that pedestal. And I feel like that's what allows us to put the Big Three on that pedestal, is that longevity. They've been relevant for so long. They've existed for so long. Even though they might have been the most popular, they were one of the most popular. They were one of the most read. They were massive driving forces in terms of collectibles, memorabilia, everything about them. They were towards the upper echelon for a massive amount of time, whereas even Hana that took over top sales and Death Note at one point, they don't have that longevity for the amount of time that the others had to justify being called the big three. And I feel like that is something we overlook, is even if they weren't the anime or the manga, they were up there and up there for fucking forever. And I think in a large way, Dragon Ball transcended massive limits in terms of people accepting the series, watching the series, reading the manga, memorabilia, collectibles, all of it. I think was pretty much, apart from maybe One Piece currently, the biggest phenomenon. But I feel like it never broke the barrier of anime, because it was never, no one saw Dragon Ball as anime. People saw Dragon Ball Z as Dragon Ball Z. They didn't see it as anime. It didn't define the anime category. It defined itself. It was its own unique thing. No one looked at Dragon Ball Z and was like, oh, that's anime. People looked at Dragon Ball Z and said, that was Dragon Ball Z. It didn't. I don't think it led as many people into watching other anime as that many people that wanted to watch Dragon Ball Z, maybe went back and watched Dragon Ball, watched Super now. I don't think it really led people down the anime rabbit hole. Whereas I feel like the big three, I don't feel like they were as culture defining, okay, except for maybe One Piece currently, but they were a lot of people's gateway drugs into anime, because they might not have been massively culturally relevant, but you went from Dragon Ball into the big three, and then from the big three maybe into other anime, Code Geass, Evangelion, Yu-Gi-Oh! I think we can throw somewhat up there, Hunter x Hunter, Death Note. All of those things, I think the big three were seen as still anime. They weren't seen as Dragon Ball. Like, that was its own fucking pedestal. It was this thing. It was this animated series, yes, but it was never really seen, I think, as anime by such a vast portion of people that even watched it. I mean, people watch Dragon Ball. You ask me to watch anime. No, I've never watched anime, but did you watch Dragon Ball Z? Yeah, of course I watched Dragon Ball Z. And don't get me wrong, I still feel like it's phenomenal. Everyone should watch it. But it was so cultural defining based off of it being Dragon Ball Z, not it being anime, whereas the big three, I think, was so culture defining because they were also seen as anime and transitioned people into anime being okay. I think they made waves and room for people to go from, stuff like Bleach, I suppose still One Piece as well, Naruto, into Boruto, into Demon Slayer, into JJK, into all the more modern animes, and it was okay to watch them because these three were relevant. They were popular for so long, maybe not the most popular, the best sellers, but they existed for so long and were seen as anime. They were anime, they were manga, they were allowed people to go down that rabbit hole a lot more than Dragon Ball just being fucking Dragon Ball and the behemoth that it was. I do feel like that is somewhat relevant in some respect that needs to be given. Yes, it is all very much hindsight now looking back, saying this, not being there at the time to say that they were the biggest. I'm not sure when the Monarch of Big 3 came out, but I feel like they do need their reverence and kind of allowed to be on the pedestal of kind of defining what anime was for the 2000s and allowing us to be where we are today. And for a lot of us, allowing anime to be seen as mainstream, I think, to a certain extent. I mean, almost everyone's watched Demon Slayer, even people that don't even know what the fuck anime is. I feel like Jujutsu Kaisen currently is massively culturally relevant with, all the fucking memes, with all the collectibles, with all the clothing, all the items, fucking with Gojo, everything like that. I mean, people talk about his fucking Toji build because that's who they want to look like. And I feel like that is, much as that has been said on the laurels of the big three. But yeah, I feel like that's my 2 cents. I've been saying the same way for about 5 different ways now. But I think it still counts, still is what it is. But yeah, most of all, guys, check out Totally Not Mark. We'll link the video as well. Phenomenal fucking piece of and research. And remember, kids, don't bully people online. If I can actually click what I'm supposed to be trying to click. Yeah, guys, just thanks so much for watching. Yeah, I completely clicked the wrong thing, so I'm super sorry. This outro went on so much longer than it should have been. But yeah, it is what it is. Life happens.